Hello and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, hi, I'm Cassidy. If it's not, thanks for always tuning into my videos. Today we are doing my February wrap-up. I had to think about what month it was. Did anyone feel like February felt so long? I know it's the shortest month of the year, and this year I just felt like it was incredibly long, and I read so many books. I've been putting off filming this wrap-up because I read a lot of books, and I feel like I read lots of them a long time ago. We're just gonna get right into it because, as I said, I read a lot of books. My actual TBR was only about 4 books long, I think. I had both the first and second Bear and the Nightingale book, Malice, and the Bone Chips on there with a mood read. And I don't really need to tell you what I mood read because I read way more than 5 books, and I completed all of those 4. I had a successful Snakes and Ladders TBR. For like regular stats, I read 13 books in February and a total of 5,131 pages. So my pages did go up since last month, but my book count actually went down by 1 book. The first book I read this month was Master of Sorrows by Justin T. Call. I read this for BookTube Bestie episode 1, where I read Jade's worst and best of 2021. I gave this book 3 stars. I really struggled with it. There are a lot of 5-star moments in this book, but lots of places that just slump so much. I have obviously very detailed thoughts in my vlog. If you do want like super detailed, go there, but I'm still gonna give you a good wrap up. This was a debut, but I have been sold this book as a villain origin story again and again and again, like even on the back of the book. That's what it says, which had me expecting a darker story than there is. We are really starting out at the beginning of our villain's story, I believe, and this is supposed to be a very, very long series. I think it's 3 trilogies or something? Not entirely sure. Please don't quote me on that. Yeah, there are weaknesses to this book. It is very world-driven. Our author is really setting up this in-depth world for this long series, and he really pushes the world building onto you, which then I think he lost the characters, and I just couldn't invest in the characters at all. I found myself so disinterested, and as someone who is not a character-driven reader, I wasn't expecting. I don't often have a book where I am just like, man, the characters really brought this down for me. But the characters brought this down for me. I just wanted more. Yeah, like, the world wasn't enough here. It was too heavy on world, not enough on character and pacing. Like, the pacing was really off in this book. I did enjoy it. I still give it a 3 stars. Like, I always do this and I rant about books, and then I'm like, wow, it sounds like I hated it. I gave it a 3 stars. I'm still continuing the series. It's a great starter book, but the pacing was off, and there are some things that just get so repetitive. There's one specific thing that just is talked about again and again and again, which it was just useless. Like, we got it, walk away, we get it, we don't need to hear it again. And yeah, some things were just drawn out really long, and some things happened in a blink of an eye. There was pacing issues, and it wasn't character driven enough, and the world building took too much of a front. And I read this so long ago. I needed to write notes this month because I read too much. Note to self, write notes for March. I can't articulate anything, but it was just a mediocre book. I'm excited to try the next one and see if it gets darker. I was let down because this was a 5-star prediction for me. Master of Sorrows is about our main character who is born with magic in a world where magic is wrong and magic is evil. And he's training in this academy to become one of the artificers who goes out and literally gets rid of magical artifacts and magical things. But he has grown up with his magic and seeing it, how it has kind of helped him. So he is kind of just unsure where to go. Like, is magic bad or is it good? That's the sum up of this. And there is a school setting. And quite different than that, we have Malice by John Gwynne, which was a 5-star prediction that I gave 5 stars. I also read this for the BookTube Bestie episode 1, and I'm obsessed with it. This was everything I wanted in a book. This book will be hard to top, I think, as my favorite for the year. Hard to top. Malice is a chosen one epic fantasy. We are following a bunch of characters, and there is the prophecy of the brightest star and the darkest moon, I think is what it is. The blackest sun and the brightest star. And we are following a bunch of characters, and we have this prophecy, and we're not sure who is the brightest star and who is the blackest sun, and you're just kind of teeter-tottering on that. And that's really all I can explain to you about what this book is about. There is a military fantasy epicness to this, and we have an animal companion who I love and is the best thing about this book. and I'm very excited to dive back into this. I gave this, like, if you have not read this book, please do. This is, like, one of the most incredible books I've ever read. It's so good. The style, everything. I can't believe I haven't read the next 3 yet, but I know when I sit down and I start the next book, I'm going to binge the entire series, so I have been waiting till I have the time and the mind to do that, because I slumped so hard after this book. It was incredible. It was so incredible. Please just read this. Literally just read this. I have nothing bad to say about it. I can't talk about books I love. I literally just tell you that I love them. I can't tell you why I loved it. I just loved it. Please read. After that, we fell into a little bit of a slump, so I needed a graphic novel. So I read Saga Volume 2. I gave this volume 4 stars. I kind of just forgot how much I love these. Saga is about, it's like a Romeo and Juliet set in space almost. We're following 2 people who are of opposite races who are against each other in, like, this war, this battle, and then they have a child together and they fall in love, and the rest of the world is essentially against them, because that should not have been a thing. This one just gave me everything I wanted. I also have read Volume 3. I'm just gonna throw it in to this. I read it in about a week's time from when I read this. I didn't like Volume 3 as much. I only gave Volume 3 3 stars. I found that this one had a lot more plot than the first and the third, if that makes sense. And I liked that, so I'm excited to continue. I literally have the 4th one. And this book is just so weird. This is a graphic novel series. It's just so weird. The art style is really amazing, I think, and it's just a really great short read, and it's entertaining. It's really good and weird. After that, I read The Inadequate Heir by Daniel L. Jensen, which is the 3rd book in the Bridge Kingdom series. Now, the Bridge Kingdom is most people know it as a duology because it is going to be 6 books long with 3 different duologies following a different pairing in each one. I really enjoyed the Bridge Kingdom and the Traitor Queen last year. And so when I was still slumping, I realized I needed something that wasn't high epic fantasy, so I picked up the 3rd. It's a fantasy romance, and this one was very interesting. I gave it 4 stars. I will say I read it at the perfect time. Like, I needed something like this. I don't know if I would have given it 4 stars at other points in the year, but when I read it, it was just everything I needed, and I rate my books based on enjoyment, so I enjoyed it. With this book, we are following characters that we have seen in the past Bridge Kingdom. I can't remember their names right now. I'm so bad at names. And so we already knew that they were kind of a couple, which was interesting. But with The Inadequate Heir, we are starting where we've already witnessed the plot that happens, which I found very interesting. We are starting back before Traitor Queen starts. We actually start right at the beginning of the Bridge Kingdom timeline, so we are getting the same plot that we've already seen from different perspectives, and a different side of the world is brought in because the Bridge Kingdom focuses on 2 of the countries mostly, and so we have a 3rd one brought into it here. And I'm not doing this justice explaining it, but I definitely thought that there were weaknesses from following a plot that I already knew. Like, I wasn't invested in the stakes as much, but at the same time, I was also really intrigued to how we got places we got in the Bridge Kingdom and the Traitor Queen. And it was nice to see some of the characters that we love and we know a couple times, and I'm very excited to see where the next one goes. And it's an enemies to lovers again, so I can't say no to an enemies to lovers. That's it. I think that's all I'm going to say. I did see a lot of improvements in Daniel L. Jensen's writing too, and I think it's only up from here. I would also tell you that if you are a romance reader trying to get into fantasy, or a fantasy reader trying to get into romance, The Bridge Kingdom is a great place to start, as it is very well balanced between romance and fantasy, in my opinion. After that, I read The Bear and the Nightingale by Katherine Arden, as well as the 2nd book in this series, The Girl in the Tower. I was supposed to read the 3rd one as well for Polarathon, but I couldn't do it, and I only read the first 2. I gave both of these books 3 stars, but honestly, there's a lot to go into with them. I was incredibly bored during this book. This is just not a series for me. It's very whimsical, it's very lyrical, it's very atmospheric, and I'm not that kind of reader. And in the but as I was trying this again, because I had picked up The Bear and the Nightingale last year and DNF'd it about 50 pages in, and then I wanted to read it again because so many people I know and love this series. it's just, yeah, it's just not for me. I found it quite boring. The second ladder of this book is, I think, what saved it and what gave it a 3-star. And then the second book is better than this book in my opinion. But I found the series itself to be very murder of the week in that aspect. Very monster of the week in that aspect. Like, each story, although, like, there is, like, an overarching tangent and, like, they are all attached to each other, each story is its own plot. Like, we're getting a story and then a story and then a story, and I prefer books that are just, like, the series that is one whole story. Does that make sense? And there was so much about this book that I just didn't enjoy. I don't have a lot of thoughts on it. I think in my vlog for it, I say that it got 3 stars because I can understand why other people like this book. Like, there is nothing wrong with this book. It's a beautiful book. It's just not a book for me. Like, full on, like, there aren't a lot of times where I can say that I don't have any complaints about a book. I just realized that this book is not for me. It's not a book that I will enjoy, but I understand why so many people love it. And yeah, I'm just grouping both of these in together because I felt very similar about both the first and the second. I gave them both 3 stars. And if I was doing it based on only enjoyment, it probably would have gotten a 2-star. And if I wasn't reading this for a vlog, I would have DNF'd this. But I did like the ending enough, and I was intrigued by the ending enough to continue to the second book. But after the second, I couldn't do the third. I couldn't bring myself to it. Like, why read books that I know I'm not going to like when there are plenty of amazing books out there? The next book I read after that was Saga Volume 3, but as I said, I give it 3 stars. Kind of similar thoughts to the first one. I'm not going to get into details on that. And then we started Book 2 Bestie Episode 2, which was Booked and Busy's Erin. So I read The Deep, which was off her Worst of the Year list, which is by River Solomon. I gave this book 2 stars. I did not like it. It's another just atmospheric read. It's very slow. It's very boring. Nothing happens in it. I, again, don't have much to say besides that it is not, there's no plot really. It's just telling you a story. It's atmospheric. It's telling you this, like, fairy tale. Not fairy tale, because it's not a fairy tale, but, like, in that sense of just telling you a story. There's not much to get, like, invested in. It's just telling you what happened, if that makes any sense. It's just not a book for me again. I did not like it. It was boring. Don't think it did what it tried to do well either. Just not a fan. Then I read She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan, which I gave 4 stars and I really, really enjoyed. She Who Became the Sun follows a girl. There's a prophecy that says that she is destined for nothing and that her brother is destined for greatness, and so when her brother dies, she becomes her brother. She takes his name, becomes him, and takes over his destiny. This is another military fantasy. There are some complaints of this book that I do understand, which is why it didn't get 5 stars. The writing style is a little jarring at times because we go from, like, one's perspective for 200 pages to part 2 all just automatically goes to, like, multi-perspective, and you're just like, wait, who are these people? Like, you haven't even met half of them, but now you have a perspective for them. I understood why this was done, because that first part gave us so much backstory and made us really believe that, Ju Jongba made us really believe Ju's character and who she's going to be, but it did get a little bit jarring, and there is, like, a lot, like, there is a scene in here that you just, like, turn the page and it happens. Like, the writing style is very jarring, but I loved the darkness in this, and I specifically loved Ouyang's character, and he just was everything I wanted, and the darkness, and I'm very excited where this series is going to go. It has got Mulan vibes to it with the whole becoming your brother. And there is a sapphic romance kind of in it. Like, okay, there is a sapphic romance in it, but this was part of the sapphic trifecta, and it was very marketed heavily as a sapphic book. The sapphic part of this book is just there. It's not like a heavy plot point. It's just part of the world, and I really appreciated that kind of representation in it. There is also a bit of a male-on-male romance. I don't want to call it a romance, but there's a lot of pining happening, and there is lots of representation in this book, and I really, really enjoyed this, but I do think, going into it knowing that it's not this, like, sapphic romance really helped with my enjoyment, and yeah, it's incredible. Oh, and it's also not very heavily fantastical. There's no, like, bang in your face magic. The magic is more just in the world itself, and it's very minor. Like, it's very historical fantasy. After that, I read To Sleep in the Sea of Stars by Christopher Paolini. By Christopher Paolini. by Christopher Pellini. This is the same author who wrote Aragon. I was very excited because I had never read Aragon or anything, and again, this was for Erin's Booked and Busy, BookTube's bestie video as one of her favorites. I actually really quite enjoyed this. I had no idea what it was about. It is a first contact with aliens, super space book, like we're flying through space. But what I really loved about this book is I never felt stupid. I often feel stupid at reading sci-fi because the scientific terms just like go over my head. Every time we used science jargon, it was explained well enough that I knew what I knew what it meant, and it just didn't make me feel stupid at any point. So I did give this book 3 stars. I really enjoyed it, and I thought about giving it a 4-star for a long time, but there are, again, pacing issues and character issues. The world that Pellini has created is so incredible and so amazing and so vast, and I talked about it in the vlog a lot. I loved that he made it very true to the fact that space is so vast, so big, but like a human mind is so small compared, and I really liked that he kind of got that, like he made me feel that in this book. But yeah, the aliens in this book are so well thought out. If you've read this book, you should go look up, like on his website he has art of like the aliens and the spaceships and all of that, and that's incredible. I said that this book read like a film to me, and I would love to see this on film, but there were really big pacing issues. The last 100 pages I was just waiting for the book to end, like it should have ended a long time before. And we spent a lot of time with different characters, which made the characters not feel as impactful. Like, we tried for the found family aspect in this, but we spend time with 3 different groups of characters, and I didn't have enough development happen with the final group of characters to make me... I didn't have enough character development to make me, like, feel for all of these characters. And also, there was a point where there's a big reveal of a character happening, and it didn't impact me at all because I was like, wait, who is that character? And I'd like go back and look that character up. Yeah. And I will say this book is not as long as you think, because there's like a 100-page thing about different space terms and spaceships and how they work and all of that. And there are some really fun aspects to this. The artificial intelligence ship is a lot of fun in this. I definitely would recommend this book though. I gave it 3 stars, but I think it was incredible. I think it was really good. Just not character driven and pacing issues. But I will read whatever he comes out with next. I'm very excited for that. After that, I started BookTube Bestie episode 3, which was Becca and the Books. So I read Planet Barbarians by Ruby Dixon. I gave this book 3 stars. Honestly, I had a hell of a time. It was a lot of fun. I can't tell you it wasn't. It was a book that is the most bizarre thing I've ever read. I'm very confused how this book has 20 books in the series and people love it so much, but I gave it 3 stars. I enjoyed it. It was fun. Like, based on pure enjoyment, it was a fun time. I was laughing the entire time. Like, there's so many weird things that happened that I couldn't take the book serious. I couldn't take the sex scene serious, but I had so much fun reading it. Like, I laughed so hard. I've never laughed this hard at a book, and I just had a really good time. So based on pure enjoyment, I couldn't give it less than 3 stars. It got 3 stars, and I don't really have much to say about it. The next book I read, Planet Barbarians, is about a girl who's kidnapped by aliens, and then she ends up on a planet and then falls in love with aliens, and there's smut and sex and romance and a 3rd nipple. And after that, I read Desperate Measures by Katie Robert, which was also for BookTube Bestie, and I'm not going to talk about this book because I just hated this book. This is the worst book I've ever read. I think, personally. I wasn't expecting what this book was necessarily about, but I also just didn't like what it did. I read it because I thought it was fantasy romance, but it's definitely more BDSM. The only fantasy in this book is the fact that they threw on fantastical names and called it a Aladdin retelling, so there's the names from Aladdin, but it is fully set in our world. It is a mafia, consensual BDSM erotica, which is not what I was expecting. And I think I could have handled all of that, but what I couldn't handle is the fact that the book tried to have a plot, and the plot just didn't go anywhere. The plot just sunk this book down. I really just didn't enjoy it, and I would highly recommend watching the vlog where I just rant about this, because this was the most entertaining thing I've ever read for people, because it was not a good time for me, but it was a good time for people to watch. Yeah, I just go into this book knowing that it is just sex after sex. Like, the sex starts on the first page, and it is intense, and there is a kink in here that is a lot, and a lot of fetishes happening, and it just is not a book for me. Literally not a book for me. I understand why some people like it, but not me. which Desperate Measures is actually on my March TBR, so I'm not really sure what I'm doing there. I jumped the gun and read it too early. But I'll potentially count. I've read a book that I think will count for that prompt. And then the last book I read this month is The Bone Chips by R.J. Barker. This was my book club pick for Backlist Book Club, and we are reading the second book next month. I had originally given this book 4 stars, but after the live show where we discussed things, I did lower it to 3 stars because it had just hit 4 stars on Cawpile, and I was very unsure whether I wanted to give it 4 or 3 in the first place. I'm very excited to see where this book goes. I really enjoyed the world in this, but if you are a character-driven reader, I think that you will have a hard time with this book because the characters are very flat, and it's one thing that I'm really hoping to get more of in the next book is some character development and some more found family and all of that, and the writing style is very interesting for lots of people. It's very wordy, descriptive. I can definitely see the Tolkien influence in this writing style, but I don't like the writing style in Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit, but I like it in here. So I can just see the influence, though it is wordy. We're describing every little thing possible. I loved the world. I will fully call myself a world-driven reader these days. I care more about the world than anything else. World than plot than character is kind of how my scale goes. But obviously I want all of them. So I was so invested in the world, all the magical creatures. I felt very immersed and I kind of understood this world. But then there are also some plot holes and there are things we want more of. And there are, in our live show, we talked a lot about what we're hoping to happen in the next book. We wanted more politics in this book than we got. There is a lot of like the first half is kind of useless, we felt. And the second half is quite good. Like, the second half is really where this book takes off and does really what I think it can do. So I'm very excited to see that continue in the next book. But I don't really have that many thoughts considering I've done a live show on it already. I just feel like I'm repeating myself. But obviously not everyone was there. I will definitely be continuing, and I think that we have some interesting takes in here, and there is a gay relationship happening at some point in the series. And I don't know. I'm interested to see where it goes, but I love a ship at sea. I love a seafaring fantasy. I think that it's becoming like one of my second favorite little subgenres of fantasy. I've read the 3 books now with like seafaring goodness, and I've quite enjoyed all of them for that seafaring aspect. So yeah, I liked it. Overall, I think I had a pretty good reading month. We had some not so good books and we had some really, really, really good books. So I will say that it balanced quite well. I'm excited to see what March has for me, although I'm feeling a little slumpy currently, and I have a readathon coming in April, announcement coming this week, so I'm gonna take it easy, I think, in March, but I am just excited to see where this goes, and yeah. I don't really have much else to say. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it to the end of this video and you'd like to leave me an emoji just to say you were here, leave me a ship emoji, like a nautical emoji, and have yourselves a wonderful, wonderful day.